Hello, and welcome back to the Masonic Roundtable, a weekly program where Masons from around the world get together to talk about Masonic news and opinions in a friendly and social manner. As a reminder, the thoughts and opinions expressed here are solely the opinions of the participants and do not represent any Grand Lodge positions or statements, so make sure you keep your conversations open for the public and on the level. To interact with us, you can always join us live Thursday nights. That's on Facebook or YouTube, so hello and good evening. Love seeing you all in the chat, or watch the chat replays later, or listen to us in your favorite podcast app, because that's where we are. Let's see. You know me, my name is John Ruark. I'm a past master of the Patriot Lodge, number 1957, in Fairfax, Virginia. Next up, for his introduction, Joe Martinez. Hey, Joe.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi. It's been so long since I've been here.
Yeah, for real.
I know. Hi, Joe Martinez. That's what the name says. Let's see. I am Master of Manasseh Lodge, halfway through my year. We'll see if I can stick it out for another 6 months. Lover of all things esoteric and fun, and I'm going to tell you today why I don't like the Georgia Guidestones. So, hello and good evening.
Hey,
Yeah.
I have to say, kudos to you for holding it together for this half a year so far with just running the lodge. It's a lot of work. So,
And
kudos.
I've only lost all of my hair.
I'd like to say it comes back,
But it doesn't.
Next up, Jason Richards. How are you?
Hello, I'm good. How are you, John?
Great.
I'm a past master of Acacia Lodge number 16 in Clifton, Virginia, member of lodges in D.C. and Ohio as well.
Nice. Covering all the bases. And last but not least, Brother Robert Johnson. How's it going, Robert?
Everything is going great. Yep.
Great.
Past master Joaquin.
Everything is
78.
awesome!
That's right. You know, I found out the Lonely Island was involved in the creation of that song.
Really?
Yeah, little known
Really?
fact. Anyway,
There's your
the
fun
Nuggets
fact for the
just.
day.
I know it was Tegan
No.
and Sarah.
Mm-hmm. So anyway, past master Joaquin 78, sitting secretary at Space Novum 1183, the premier education lodge in the state of Illinois, and the host of the Once Came You Masonic podcast. And I'm happy to see all of you and interact with you and all of the good stuff.
Great. It's good to be
We
here.
missed you all. Pinching your cheeks virtually.
Aw, bro hugs. Let's see. So, before we get into tonight's topic, definitely want to give a shout out to all the patrons who've been supporting the show. You guys are awesome and super cool, and we love to interact with you offline between the episodes. So if you want to chat with us in our little private Facebook group, love to see you over there. Head over to patreon.com/the Masonic Roundtable. Thanks. Awesome. So tonight is an interesting topic, one we wanted to queue up for the last week. Just couldn't make it work for timing and everybody's schedules, but here we are back to talk about the Georgia Guidestones. Are they Masonic? Are they linked to some grand conspiracy? Or are they just big pieces of rocks that really aren't there anymore? So if you've been following the news, they kind of just blew up mysteriously on the morning of
Literally.
July 6th. Yeah, out of the blue. And that's something I'm going to pull the thread on tonight, because I think it's curious how they haven't caught anyone yet. But yeah, let's talk about what the Georgia Guidestones are, who came up with them, how they got erected, and then what's on them, what led them to be the source of many conspiracy theories. So in true historical fashion, why don't we start with Brother Jason to peel back the historical onion and find out the history
Peel
of
it.
these Guidestones.
Peel it, brother.
Peel it!
Peel it.
Oh, all right. Picture this.
There you were.
Field in Georgia, 1980. Somebody gets the idea that they want to build an American Stonehenge. Little did they know, we already have that in Natural Bridge, Virginia, called Foamhenge.
Foamhenge.
But Foamhenge is real.
And has not been blowed up.
Yes.
And has not been blown up. Although it's a bit worse for wear.
Blown over, but not blown up.
Yeah. So the Georgia Guidestones were erected in 1980. In 1979, a man using a pseudonym, Robert C. Christian, approached a granite company in Georgia and commissioned the structure. And they wanted it, this unknown beneficiary wanted the stones to function as a compass, calendar, and clock, and should specifically be capable of withstanding catastrophic events. You know,
Until it wasn't.
fast, good, and cheap, pick two, right? So the pseudonym was reportedly a reference to the Christian religion, and Christian, the pseudonym, not the religion, wanted the monument to essentially rival Stonehenge, even though we still had Foamhenge. The total project cost was Foamhenge at Cox Farms. What?
Oh my God, that's like down the road.
Yeah, it moved. It's.
Oh my God, we're going. We're going.
Wow.
Okay, sorry to distract you there.
It's in Natural Bridge, Virginia.
Not
That's
anymore.
the original place.
Yes. Go ahead.
Oh my
And
goodness. So you are messing with my chi.
I see
Anyway, the total cost of the project, we don't know what the total cost was, but it was over $100,000. And when the structure was erected, they essentially erected a set of pillared monuments, each with a different language. So there are, 10, inscriptions, commandments, proverbs, whatever you call it, each inscribed on each stone in English, Spanish, Swahili, Hindi, Hebrew, Arabic, traditional Chinese, and Russian. And so they had been there since 1980, and we'll get into what those specific mantras were. But of course, Georgia Guidestones started to make news again in the Georgia gubernatorial, the Georgia gubernatorial primary, because they seem to be cast as some satanic cabal monument. And
sorry, but all I could do is when you referenced them and you said goober, all I was like, because they're just total goobers.
that was intentional.
Good, yeah.
It's peanuts. It's
Yeah.
peanut country.
Oh, dying in my head. I'm sorry.
If the joke has to be explained, then it's a garbage joke.
I'm just saying it was great.
Or you're just slow. Oh my goodness.
Everybody's so sassy today.
For real.
Continue, Jason.
I know.
Continue.
That's what happens when you give us a week off. So, at the end of the day, in July of this year, actually, this past month, like several weeks ago, there was an explosion at the Guidestones. I believe the explosion was targeting the Swahili part of the monument. It might have been the Swahili and Hindi monument, that part of the monument that was destroyed.
Mm-hmm.
The Swahili Hindi language slab.
Correct.
Yeah, and caused significant damage to the capstone. It was July 6th, 2022. And so within the same day, the rest of the Guidestones were dismantled and carted away, and the culprit's never been found.
Yeah.
The end.
There you go.
The end. That's the show.
Boom. See you next week.
So, the interesting thing about this is we've had this modern American Stonehenge, not counting Foamhenge, that's been erected for 40 plus years by an anonymous donor, made right out of Georgia granite, because that was really kind of a an icon in itself because that whole area is known for its quarries for granite. And here you go. You have this really weird, cryptic, iconic, monolith that's kind of coming out of the ground, out in the middle of nowhere. It's out in the middle of the fields. It's actually, I think, part of the terms for the use of the land was that the cattle could still, they bought it from a farmer, and the cattle could just still use the land all around it to graze. So that's anytime that something is put there anonymously with obscure text and no explanation, of course, conspiracy theorists just jump right at the bit to try to.
Satan was behind it.
You know,
of course, Satan's like,
Freemasons.
Why?
Freemasons.
Why do you all think I'm building weird shit? Like,
exactly, out in the middle of nowhere.
In Georgia.
Yeah.
When you reference,
I'm sorry, Maribel.
When you reference
you.
the
language,
the name for this, in several of the documentaries that I had seen, up until the point where I just kind of didn't care anymore, was that it was built by, the assumption was, some Rosicrucian body, and from the just from those initials. And what is funny, right, is like the Masons, well, arguably the most organized, there are really only two super organized versions of Rosicrucianism. There's Amorc and there's Masonic Rosicrucianism. And so necessarily, both are involved in Freemasonry, at least in their foundations.
Mm-hmm.
So if they were Rosicrucian in origin, then they would be Masonic. But alas.
And they would be a Christian monument.
That's true.
That's true.
Ew.
Which is strange because you have all the fundamentalist Christian organizations that have been trying to, to take it down, call for its taking down, and even putting graffiti on it. So,
And do you know what I find absolutely funny and kind of ironic is the same type of fundamentalists who had a problem with it are the same
ones
kind of
who
people
would most
it.
agree with the tenets inscribed on it.
That's conjecture.
Well, there's
I'm just saying, the guy we now know presumably who built it, and because we know him and his viewpoints, we can probably say that he's kind of fundamentalist himself. So
let's talk about those viewpoints. What are those viewpoints?
That is ad hominem, Robert.
All right.
I don't like that guy, therefore it's wrong. Okay, so what we're going to do for this round, we're going to walk through the 10 quote-unquote commandments that are on the
don't call them that.
Satanic commandments? I don't know. What do you call it? The guides in
inscriptions.
The
10
inscriptions.
inscriptions.
And what we'll do is
neutral.
We'll do a hot take. What we'll do is we'll read one and then kind of discuss yay or nay. Can we go along with that? Just as a gut, right? No other thought put into it. All right. So starting at number 2, there's a reason for that. Starting number 2, we're going to guide reproduction wisely, improving fitness and diversity. What do you say? Is that a good idea? Bad idea?
I'm with Joe here because it sounds nefarious, but then I hear the word diversity,
and
I want to think that's great.
It's like maybe,
you know what comes to mind? Moonraker. You all seen 007? Moonraker?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
He gets like the best of the best.
Well, so that's the first inkling towards like eugenics and trying to, have a tailored future race, if it were.
Well, yeah, I mean, and that's where a lot of people who did not like the Guidestones kind of went with number 2, right? Where we read it at its face value. It says guide reproduction wisely and improve fitness and diversity. But a lot of the people who read this, knowing who presumably created it, we kind of make some assumptions there. And those assumptions are they were talking about eugenics, right? Which is the, defined procreation of human life towards a specific end state, right? For those who like Star Trek, Khan, eugenics, You know, he was perfect. He had that dashing hair and those super big, big old chest muscles, and he was like 70 years old. He was awesome.
Pecs.
And
But
he
yeah,
shouldn't have killed Spock.
Yep, that's
No,
right. But
should
he comes
not.
back. Spoiler alert.
Yeah.
But yeah, but a lot of people point to this one and talk about eugenics, where eugenics usually has very racist overtones. The Nazis practiced eugenics.
And so that's the thing with all of these. If you read them literally at face value and you don't try to associate it with the presumed creator of these or whatever, you just look at them as they are and not try to say, try to interpret who is guiding these things. Right. On face value, they seem okay. Right. I would go along with guiding reproduction wisely to say, hey, we should all be fit and we should all be diverse. Like, that's a good thing.
It
Well,
sounds like
and
universal health care.
Access, we could bring this into a family planning type of approach where, make sure that folks have access to contraception and things like that. That is a way to
I don't read that.
guide
That's
reproduction.
number 11 fell off the.
Thanks,
the
Mao
stone there.
Zedong.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for that.
Number 3, here we go. Uniting humanity with a living new language.
I was not talking about a one-child law. You guys are terrible.
Sure you weren't.
I hate all of
Hey,
you.
how many children do you have? Okay. Number 3, unite
10.
humanity with a living
That I know of.
new language.
I hate you.
What do you say? Good, bad, a living new language.
I kind of dig it. I think if the purpose is to break down barriers between nations and things like that, one of the biggest things that separates us is, and we've talked about over nationalistic tendencies before. One way to actually unite humanity would be to do away with those restrictions, right? So, going to a different country and everybody speaks one common language, kind of like Star Wars. Everybody speaks, whatever the hell that language is.
What was
that sounds like English?
Hey, Galactic Basic. Hey, what
There
was
was-
the
Klingon.
was a
Klingon.
language.
what was that language that Nick Johnson knew? You know the one I'm talking about.
Esperanto.
Yeah,
Esperanto. See, there you go.
yeah.
It's probably the closest thing.
Esperanto was supposed to be the language,
Mhm.
think about Blade Runner. In the beginning of Blade Runner, he talks about how everything on the streets is a blend of Spanish, English, and Chinese, or Mandarin rather. And I thought that was kind of interesting, and I didn't think of it like as dystopian or anything. I just thought, yeah, that's kind of neat. And I don't think that we're far off from that. I mean, I think, especially with a lot of the kids shows and things today where kids are picking up different languages, Montessori schools, and all of these other things, I think we're just going to end up having multilingual children and being able to swing in and out of languages. I mean, those of you who have parents that speak another language, that your mom or dad like swings in and out when they get pissed. So,
True.
my mom does.
Absolutely.
I hear that.
Okay, so we're all kind of on board for that, at least the spirit of it. Number 4, rule passion, faith, tradition, and all things with tempered reason. Probably the most Masonic of them all, right? To
Let people guide their own reproduction wisely.
that has
We
nothing to do
finished
with
that one.
That's moving
Stop
on.
it.
Moving
Right.
on.
And
Common.
no,
Well, so you guys probably don't know, but rule number
that's
4
not the worst
actually,
I've ever been called.
Rule number
That night
4
was
is
young.
actually endorsed by Ron Paul. So
Really?
no, I'm just kidding.
What?
Yeah.
John was like, "Oh man, I'm on board."
This is it. This is my jam.
I was
Sign me up.
skeptical, but
I hate you guys.
my boy Ron.
But this does sound like a
that's common
Masonic
theme
tenet.
for this show.
This does sound like a Masonic tenet about, keeping your passions, within certain boundaries, especially on faith and tradition, and everything with tempered reason. Like we're taught to apply logic and reason to all things. So if any of those 10 were going to be Masonic in nature, I could certainly say that number 4 would be.
I agree. Now this is the one that
Everything in
also
moderation.
people,
In moderation.
especially very evangelical folks, they took this one and said, "Oh, we can't have faith. It's all reason. Faith is not allowed anymore." And again, that's where they kind of went to the extreme with number 4 here. So, no more traditions. You can't have your own individual faiths. Everything, reason governs all. And they use,
They aren't mutually exclusive.
I think
how many
they are,
kids do you have?
but okay.
Touche.
That I know of.
Number 5, protect
Thomas
people
Paine.
and nations with
Thomas
fair
Paine and
laws.
reason.
There you go. Protect people and nations with fair laws and just courts. Who can argue with that?
Oh my
Next.
God, they
Fair
did
law
move
and
Foam
just
Henge to Centerville.
Did I lie?
We're going.
Yeah, we're going.
All right. Number 6, let all nations rule internally, resolving external disputes in a world court.
Like the UN, but actually have power.
Yes, can actually do something, accomplish something.
What if the UN had like a Supreme Court that had, people from various judicial backgrounds from different countries that sat on they were the what do you call it? So it's like tribunal. Yeah. Right. And then you just got to
Trilateral
go
commission?
before them, right? Whoa. You're getting a little too Alex Jones here.
It's a shocking correlation.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, what if that would be kind of interesting and it would be probably a whole lot more effective than say sanctions and tariffs.
Well, it depends on the authority to mete out consequences.
Well, I mean, we kind of do have it already. I'm trying to think when it first started. I mean, the UN does have their international court, and there's people from how many judges are sitting on it? It's like what, 10 or 12 judges, and they come from, we have somebody from the US, we have someone from Russia, China, a bunch of other countries. So that already exists. I'm just trying to think when it came into being. Was it before or after?
1945. So
okay,
UN was around before this. So this is maybe something in addition to or in replacement of. I don't know. I'm on the fence for this one because that implies that there is a if you have national sovereignty, then there has to be something above national sovereignty to resolve disputes, and that starts to then hurt my head about, well, then are you sovereign anymore?
Well, I mean, let's peel the onion
Very
back
libertarian
on
of you.
I'm just saying.
But so I'm asking the libertarian. So it says, let all nations rule internally. What if you have a nation that is, their rulers are lining women and children up against walls and putting bullets in their heads and all this awesome stuff? Do we let them continue doing what they're doing, or do we go bitch slap them?
Even if we went after that, do you need a world court to adjudicate that? Or can you say, hey, our nation feels that is an infringement on human rights, we're going to go and take care of that? Do you need a third party, a world court, to approve it, not approve it?
No.
So,
No.
that's... So either way, whether you're for isolationism or non-interventionism or, having authority to go and attack other countries, do you need a world court? So that's, I could be swayed either way, but I'm just throwing out a different opinion out there.
So it's kind of like the Grand Lodge system in Freemasonry today. It's the sovereignty of Grand Lodges.
The show was
each
going
Grand
well
Lodge is sovereign
until Jason
in their
brought
own
that up.
jurisdiction. I'm just bringing it back to Masonry.
Yes.
Listen, I like his thread.
I see where you're going with it.
So let me ask
For once.
Mousy Tongue this question. So the Grand Lodge of
Joe,
Grand Lodge
I
of
hate you.
Virginia,
I hate you so
more.
hard.
So the Grand Lodge of
Probably.
Virginia is fighting with the Grand Lodge of Florida. Who would be that overriding body that gets to decide who's right and who's wrong?
Grand Lodge of the U.S., of course.
The Conference of Grand Masters.
Ooh, which is like a world court of, or
Which is like the UN in the sense that they don't have a lot of
Nothing
sweeping
gets
power.
done.
They don't. I was going to say they can't tell Grand Lodges what to do, right?
Yeah.
No, they can't.
The Conference of Grand Masters is like where Grand Lodges go together to go behind closed doors and then admit to themselves where they have problems very carefully and then try to solve them with decades-old solutions.
So it does sound like
You're
the
not
UN. I stand corrected. Okay, right on.
I say Nick Johnson is watching on Facebook, so you just mention Esperanto and he shows up. So
Boom.
Oh. But we didn't say it 3 times.
we did not say it 3 times. All right, number 7, avoid petty laws and useless officials. I'm down for that.
2 thumbs up from me.
I am down for that. I in researching for the show, I said, I wonder how many pages the U.S. Code is. And if you're looking at all the laws under the federal U.S. Code, it's about 60,000 pages printed out. And yes, they do have to print it out for the Library of Congress. So, yeah, there's probably some petty laws in there, and there's probably some useless officials in there. I'm all for avoiding that as to the
Let's
greatest
talk
extent
about
possible.
why the seatbelt is a petty law.
Yes.
But okay.
No, yes. Moving on, number 8. Balance personal rights with social duties. Balancing personal rights with social
Let's
duties.
dismantle this a little bit.
This one's tough.
Because when I mentioned this, when I was actually talking with my oldest son about this, and he says, "Wow, you know what movie comes to mind?" And I said, "What?" That's right. We're going to rear the ugly head of one Starship Troopers again.
Nice.
Ooh. Okay.
I'm doing my part.
I'm doing my part. Personal rights with social duties. So is that saying, like, if you don't perform your social duty, then you don't deserve the personal right? Or like, what is it actually saying here? I'm curious.
Well, that's what Starship Trooper says. Yeah, I mean, you don't.
Right.
You got to go do your duty, and then you become a citizen. So that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, and so again, I took a different approach when I read this. That it's to me, it is the difference between authoritarianism and anarchy. Right? It's the difference between having the state dictate the rights you are allowed to have and not to have versus the freedom to operate in a civilized society. And so there are social norms and customs that you don't need a law for. It's just good behavior. There's no law that says that you should wait your turn in line in the bank when you're waiting for a teller. That is a social duty to queue. And, you know, in Japan, England, right, queuing is a huge part of that culture. That is a social duty.
When was the last time you actually talked to a bank teller?
Actually, just the other day. So, but you don't need to have that made codified into law that you should do certain things, right? So, you're allowed to do certain things and not allowed to do other things. And so it's a balance between your own liberties and freedoms compared to societal norms or societal laws and code. So that's why I think the balance is there. It's just trying to make sure that you're not going too far one way or the other, from true anarchy to, making sure that everything has to be written down for you.
So I kind of see it as that, inherent right to life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, in the sense that you have a personal right and you have personal rights to do whatever you want. The problem is when your exercising of that personal right causes damage and harm to someone else's ability to do so.
Yeah.
And I see, balancing your personal rights, and the rights that make up society on the other side, and making sure that one doesn't infringe upon the other.
Yeah, it's like the old saying, right? Like, your personal
Joe
rights
disagrees.
end where mine begin.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And we could go into a whole conversation of natural rights versus negative rights, etc. But we don't have time for that. That'd be a good topic for another show. Number 9, prize truth, beauty, and love, seeking harmony with the infinite. That's 2 thumbs up
You mean
from Joe.
truth, beauty, and charity?
Agape.
Caritas.
What?
Yes, I like that one. I think that
Carnitas?
one's a win.
Mm.
See,
Yeah, carnitas
They're
are
my
good.
favorite. Yeah.
Store
Oh,
gay.
that's
Store
a great
gay.
one.
Hashtag store gay.
ooh,
Prize truth, beauty, and love, seeking harmony with the infinite. That's awesome. Yeah, I think that's something that
I'm good with that.
can't go wrong with that.
when you had me at love. Number 10, be not a cancer on the earth, leave room for nature. Leave room for nature. So important, they said it twice.
Mm-hmm.
Did we mention leave room for nature?
So I take a look at this, and I think of the story that was told when the pandemic first kind of kicked off, and you had people doing a rush on toilet paper, and folks liken that to, it's like, it's the difference between going to a party and people hearing there's not enough pizza, and you have the people that take 3 slices apiece because they're worried it's going to run out, and the people who only take 1 to try to make sure there's room for everyone else. And so I think it's really it just kind of refocuses everything toward moderation and leaving space.
See, you had me torn at the pizza analogy, because going back to the toilet paper one that I was following with, like, we didn't go crazy buying toilet paper. We bought bidets because we were like, yeah, who needs toilet paper? We're just going to bidet everybody. So this is a bidet household. Yeah, Robert knows what I'm talking about. But when you bring it back to the pizza argument, if you told me there was not enough pizza, I would be sad inside. And so I would do what I needed to do
Me
to get more of the
too.
pizza.
Heck with toilet paper.
So yeah, so I think going back to the balance, we can balance my personal rights for pizza with not giving a crap if you get any pizza. So, I'm gonna
Yeah, I mean, eat grass.
call out number 8.
I mean, you're just a bad person.
have sliders instead. What do you want me to tell
What
you?
is
I'm getting
okay?
pizza.
So, okay, I want to say it was probably Paul Zaloom back in the day on Beekman's World when he talked about the world population back then. It was like, it wasn't what it was today, obviously, but it was like probably 6.5 billion or something. And they basically did this calculation that showed, while the human species loves to like just spread out, and as we engineer and create new ways of making comfort and new ways of bringing the comforts of, first world to remote parts of the planet, it starts to endanger the indigenous wildlife and all of the things in those areas. So I see where he's going with this, but also at the same time, just an interesting fact is that they said that if everybody in the entire world were to live in the same like the same density
Right.
as they live in Manhattan,
Right.
then the world population would fit in Texas.
Or New Zealand. Yep.
So with that said, like, we are spread quite all over the planet. And we are ourselves, the way we operate as an invasive species. We're predatory. We do all these things, and yet, we try to maintain balance. I think is the platform of even political parties, but you also see with corporations today, like Apple and the campus that they I don't know if they ever completed it or not, but I think they did, right? Where they did the whole campus where all the parking was underground and you had to have a park on top of it and all these trees. And, they're attempting to have this balance. And I rather do like the idea.
Yeah.
You all ever seen, have you ever seen Rollerball, like the first one? And there's a scene where a guy is like shooting a gun at trees, and it's a fireball gun, and then like they're all just drunk shooting trees and burning trees down. That's like what they do for fun. Like, the farther we can get from that, the better.
Yeah, that would be good. That would be good.
Yeah, I haven't
Where
seen
is
that
this
yet.
episode going?
So fireballs in the trees. So yeah, be not a cancer on the earth. We all can get behind that.
Not just whiskey.
But let's go back to number 1. We skipped over that one purposefully. Maintain humanity under 500 million in perpetual balance with nature. This one gets everyone riled
That's
up.
very Thanos. I mean, it's worse than Thanos because the world population is about 7 billion, I think.
7.753 billion as of 2020.
Mm-hmm.
So that means over 7 billion people would have to go to maintain humanity at that 500 million.
You know who's going first? The people that grabbed my pizza. They're number 1.
Yes, and the
Boom.
toilet paper. Yes, if you
Yes,
the
because
toilet
they'll
paper.
starve because you ate all the pizza.
So this one, like you said, this one really touches people's nerves.
Mm-hmm.
And I think for good reason. Obviously, that number doesn't matter if you're one of the 500,000. But if you're not, how do you choose? This goes back to
It
that
still
earlier
does
law.
matter.
Say more.
Still does
Yeah,
matter because you will know people who are in the 7 billion.
Okay, you have the
Totally.
externalities.
Oh,
Yeah,
Guaranteed,
Yep.
yeah.
And I mean, right now, science, a lot of scientists, they run this problem all the time, which is the actual question: how many people can Earth support? We're like approaching the cap. 9 to 10 billion is what they say. So thinking
we'll see
about
that
that,
soon. Yeah,
we're going to see that by the time we're senior citizens.
yeah.
Hashtag 2040.
It's all gonna happen.
Lump
2040,
it all
man.
together.
You're going to see
It's my grand unified
child
theory.
laws
Yep.
and regulation. I'm sure of it.
Well, I mean, to not to be as Debbie Downer as you, but I mean, no, we are really approaching the cap where the way we live today, exactly what you were talking about, how you could fit all of the human population right now in Texas. Not this week, because it's like 175 degrees there this week. So don't go to Texas unless you live in Texas.
Everything expands with the heat, so just be
keep your thermostats at 82 degrees, Texans. Good job with that. But but I mean, I had to
the
look
power
it up.
grid's still gonna break.
The power grid. I had to look this up. The last time the Earth was at 500 million people was in 1600. So that's when we had around 500 million things crawling around that
Interesting.
we call people on this Earth. So,
So again, if you read it at face value and not say that something is going to force the removal of 7 billion people, but just to say, hey, let's try to maintain humanity under this artificial level. Hey, it's to be in perpetual balance with nature. Not a bad goal. We're way far from that, right? It's just like saying, I want to get down to my, high school weight. Yeah, that's a long way away.
well,
I'd like to
but you don't have
maintain that.
You don't have to kill 95% of the people around you to hit your high school
Correct.
weight, though.
Right.
What I mean? Like,
All right.
And it doesn't
Think
say kill
about-
people.
Think about
put down the quarter
intent.
pounder with cheese. Don't.
The intent of the Guidestones, arguably here, is to guide humanity after an apocalypse. So, if you take that into consideration, humanity might be well underneath the 500
Already. Mm-hmm.
million level. So this is then just saying, hey, you have a shot, you got a second shot at this. Maybe don't mess it up. And then the way I'm also thinking about it in the same way is not unlike the repository for the archives of Masonry, right? Like the laws, the rules, the sciences, the Emerald Tablet of Thoth, Jehudi, whatever you want to call it, like all of that stuff compiled into, it's a real similar idea. And in fact, right, this was like the basis in a digital form of the Foundation series, right? They had to form the Encyclopedia Galactica for the fall of the Foundation so that people could rise up again, but not have to be taken back to such a barbaric level of knowledge. And in this same respect, this is just like, hey, we kind of figured out these universal rules, in the 1980s. Maybe try it out when you guys are building back.
When you're building back, yeah.
Better.
So let's talk about. Wow. So let's talk about. Goodness gracious. Let's talk about where we are with the population and how the population is changing across the earth today.
Mm-hmm.
So the population replacement rate is 2.1 children per household. So each household on the face of the planet would need to produce 2 and a spare offspring to be able to maintain the current level of population. I am using 2022 numbers. There are just under half of all the countries in the world are actually lower than the population replacement rate.
Yeah, we are definitely slowing down.
So yeah, especially over the last 30 or so years. Interestingly enough, where you have the highest fertility rates are in some of the poorest countries in the world.
Right, and that's due to the not available knowledge on contraception.
Right.
So the more libertine the country is about, opening up and talking about sexuality, sexual transmitted diseases, all of those things, you actually increase the mortality rate, lessening the amount of children one needs to have because you don't have to worry about them dying.
Mm-hmm.
This was the whole thing with Mr. Condom.
You
over in Asia.
lessen the mortality rate.
Right.
Yes, I'm sorry. Thank you, Jason.
Has anybody explained this to all the people on the Bravo channel and every single family on Discovery Plus, because they haven't gotten that memo, and
like
we're
the
seeing
Duggars.
14, 15, 8.
Yeah.
The Duggars, yes.
Also,
Somebody needs to send them a fax.
Related though, Jason, is that they found that over the past, I believe, 20 years, just since this century, that male testosterone has been cut in half too.
Yes, that's right.
And they don't know why, and that's really
think
weird.
About it. Think about this whole idea of the enclosed system, right? Like there is a perpetual balance that's struck by nature.
Mm-hmm.
Could there not be some sort of thing we've not discovered yet that actually controls all of these underlying things, right? Like for every time you cross a T, something happens over here. You don't even know about it.
Right.
So like as we progress as a society, as we generally increase in population, perhaps it's just by human design that all of a sudden testosterone lessens because you're not out hunting. Okay. You're not out surviving. Most of us, our biggest confrontation is the argument we have with our boss in the shower about the things we should have said. And it requires nothing.
Why are you showering with your boss?
That's right. Why are you showering with your boss?
No, but I see where you're going. The saber-toothed
Right.
tiger
Water
has been
shortage.
replaced with that email.
That's right.
We're not in Texas.
And remember that not only testosterone, but male fertility rates
Right.
are dropping off dramatically as well.
Yep.
So is this like
Foreshadowing?
is it just like this underlying mathematical foundation that is actually course correcting? And we don't even know it. Everything is in the program. I don't know how to describe it.
No, I think
If
yeah, I
we're
think you
truly
make a
in
lot
a
of sense,
closed
and
system,
no, go
Sorry,
ahead. What I was probably going to say the same thing you were, but nature always
we're
seems
truly-
to get back in balance. You know what I mean?
Life finds a way.
Life finds a way. Yes.
All right, so
Yes, and whatever Jason was going to say.
we're in a closed system, Jason.
it was
So
going to be.
we've got those
John,
10
I hate you.
inscriptions. Let's
I hate
go-
everybody on this call.
Let's go find out. You're breaking up, Jason. I think we might lose you here in a second. Let's talk
We
about.
broke up like the Beatles.
Thanks, Yoko.
Let's talk about who we believe
That was
was
a
actually
Marvel reference.
behind these.
Nick Johnson is like cheering at his computer.
So wasn't there some sort of speculation as to the actual identity of R.C. Christian? Robert, you alluded to that in the
Yes.
beginning. Jason, you know?
So there was a documentary, published in 2015 called Dark Clowns over Elberton, The True Story of the Georgia Guidestones, where in this documentary, the documentary crew was able to go in and look at correspondence between the Mr. Christian and the builders of the Guidestones, and they found a postmark and a return address of the correspondence that led them to a house owned by Mr. Robert Merriman. But then they also identified that Mr. Merriman didn't actually own the house. Instead, a local doctor named Herbert Hinsey Kirsten was the owner of the house at the time this correspondence was written. And so, putting together that evidence, it has been supposed that Herbert Kirsten was the one who commissioned the monument to be built in the first place.
Yeah, and what we found out about that individual is what was troubling that we had alluded to is the fact that he had written a couple letters praising, I shouldn't say praising, he references David Duke, who at the time was like the head of the Ku Klux Klan. And I'm not saying he praises David Duke, but what he says is David Duke has ideas that a great many Americans have, and that there should be more representatives for local governments and things that share some of those values or thought processes. Now, do I think he's praising David Duke? No, but I do think he is referencing in a dangerous way, pointing out that there are perhaps points of view. It's kind of open-ended, that may be valued by some Americans that should be represented in some way. I don't think so, but in the same respect, it would be like if I said, if you had a diary where Adolf Hitler's like, I love mathematics, and then somebody says, I love mathematics. Well, you know who else did, right? There's a danger there to assume that he's like
Right.
a Ku Klux Klan.
Yeah, it's back to the ad hominem attacks, right? Where
Yeah.
Well, and and based on the local historians' viewpoint, Herbert Kirsten was widely known for his views on population control and eugenics, and that he was, by all intents and purposes, very racist. Now, none of that came out in Herbert Kirsten's obituary that we were able to find and read. But
do they write those kinds of things in people's obituaries?
by the way,
sir?
dude was racist. You know that, right?
Yeah, no,
He
did
survived
because
by
we
his
had his
wonderful wife
name.
Janice, and he's a huge racist.
Because we
He
had
sent
his name
flowers.
in a couple of the states in which he lived or operated, died, and born in, kind of thing. I went ahead and I ran a check through my Grand Lodge because I wanted to know, was he a Mason in any of the states mentioned in the obituary? So I wrote my Grand Secretary, and Right Worshipful Brother Frank Klein, thank you so much, got back to me in about 3 or 4 days, and they did an exhaustive search, and he was not found. So we can safely say that
yes,
he was not a Freemason.
Yeah. There is no tie that we've been able to prove or find that ties Freemasons and Rosicrucians to the Guidestones. He was a member of the Rotary, though.
Dun dun dun. All right, two things I want to bring up, and then we'll get to the final question. First off, we forgot to mention too that it did have astrological significance, although it was very basic, with a hole drilled through so you could see Polaris or the North Star at all times.
You're basic.
Meh, not too crazy. The Guidestones were aligned to the various risings of the sun at the extremes in the east, and then they also had something about a slot at the top where at noon every day it would cast light through the top onto the center column. I mean that's basic stuff. That's really nothing that's reserved for your ancient aliens kind of stuff. So Joe would approve.
It's like pumpkin spice Stonehenge.
Pumpkin spice. It's basic. Yeah.
I'll agree to that.
And then the last thing was, again, how it all came down was really strange because we have this 4 a.m. bombing. No one has seen the bomb being placed. There's a little bit of shady, suspect car footage at 4 a.m. that day. That's it. Like, no one's been caught yet. And not only did it just happen very quickly and mysteriously, by like the afternoon they already were tearing down all the other stones right away. Like, these guys already had gas in their vehicles ready to go tear this thing down. So I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but it seems a little shady how quickly it all went down.
It's suspect, yeah.
It's suspect.
Yeah.
Any word
For comparison sake, after the Zanesville Masonic Temple caught fire back in January, it took on the order of weeks,
Wow.
if not like over a month, to actually tear the building down.
Wow.
Like, so that was a very quick mobilization on the part of Georgia.
So I'm curious about this. Maybe you guys know. I had heard a rumor, maybe on some third-party weird news site, that perhaps with the demolition of the Guidestones, it would allow for a time capsule that was purportedly to be there
6 feet
open.
below. Mm-hmm.
So there is a time capsule.
They found none. They did dig
There's nothing
in the supposed location 6 feet below, and there was none to be found.
That's
so
what
the
they
report
say.
says, dun, dun, dun. Yes, I agree. All right, so here we are, late in the show, final question time. So it's a two-parter. The question is, should a set of Guidestones be rebuilt, whether there or somewhere else? And if you were in charge, and if you were the supposed RC Christian, would you put anything different, new, or some other kind of monument for prosperity? So should it be replaced, whether in the same location or not? And if replaced, what would you add or change, subtract, do something completely different? Let's go to Jason.
Yes.
Yeah, I get to think about it.
So, should you replace it one for one? I think the time has passed, and whatever effect the original commissioners had, or wanted to have, I think that time has come and gone.
We still have Foamhenge.
We still got Foamhenge, so it's a much better astrological clock. I would say if anything, I think you can distill down a lot of the better cliches and inscriptions in that monument to, simply just be kind to each other and take care of the planet.
The Bill and Ted rule.
And be excellent to one another. It's, hey, it's the Jesus commandments of, love the Lord your God with all your heart and soul and mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. Not equating Earth to deity, but just taking care of those around you, I think is being kind to everyone, I think is worthy of inscription everywhere.
Nice. I like it. Thanks, Jason. Let's head over to Joe next, so he doesn't get trumped by RJ. But he got trumped by Jason, so
Yes,
there's that.
yes, Jason threw my answer out, but because it's such a great answer. But yeah, so would I rebuild them? No, because again, we don't know what the purpose was that they were erected for. And we have to realize that even though it's not that long ago, 1980 was a much different time than it was today. The Cold War was still raging. The doomsday clock was always at 5 minutes away from midnight. People really had this fear, between 1980 and about 30 years before it, that there was going to be a nuclear holocaust, any day now. So that's where ideas like this could marinate and get transposed into these huge granite blocks. But yeah, I'm gonna agree with Jason here that if we were to put anything up, it would be the love your neighbor rule. Love your neighbor rule, and don't be a d-bag, because I think that those two cover pretty much everything. And so yeah, we can have
Wheaton's
a single
Law.
monolith. Wheaton's Law. Just put a picture of Will Wheaton up. On a granite block. I'll chip in $50. Boom, done. Let's do it.
Yep,
Nice.
Let's do it.
There's got to be a statue for him already out there somewhere.
Start a Kickstarter. Let's do it.
All right, Robert. What say you?
I don't think I would rebuild them in, like Jason says, a 1-for-1. I think I would love to see something be built, and I would love to see this monument or things like it built all over the place. I don't think $100,000 is a lot of money when we're looking at today's dollars.
Mm-hmm. It's about
or to-
$325 now, I think, in today's
yeah,
dollars.
I mean, even so, like you can look, local governments and local buildings and people who make stuff all the time, like there are grants and all this money flies around to do stupid stuff. I don't think it would be inappropriate to fund something that calls out to the better natures of humans, and erect those different places. It's kind of like being reminded all the time of how great and lovely life is, right? You all have those super positive people. Sometimes people are like, it's so gross. They're just so positive all the time. My wife every single day posts some super kind, be kind meme or something on Facebook, and just, accosts everybody. And like, sometimes I'm like, dude, come on. But all the time, I do appreciate it. I do find that seeing those over and over is a reminder, just like the working tools in Freemasonry, reminders and things that make things better. And I think with a lot of these rules, like, I wouldn't put number 1 on there. I don't really care about a perpetual balance, the number there. I think there should be balance in nature. Leave it at that. Guiding
Nice.
reproduction wisely. I don't really see a problem with that, as long as the context is understood to mean not eugenics.
Yeah.
I don't really care about a living new language. I think diversity in languages is beautiful. The whole thing with rule, passion, faith, tradition, all things with tempered reason. I think there's something along the lines of let reason be the guide of our faith, and that's how I kind of work with these things. Let all nations rule internally. Like, these kinds of rules and laws are interesting, but at the same time, if you're talking about something like after an apocalypse, there's still going to be countries like that. I mean, I don't really understand. You're probably going to be almost like a one world community. And I think ultimately, the rule of kindness, as you guys have talked about, can rule the day. We eventually will get to the whole humankind thing, and I think that's something to strive toward. I think is it in It's in the standard work here in a closing lodge charge. Is it maybe from Revelation? Jason, you probably know, right? Where it talks about like, all singing the same praise. And I think that's important. Not to say that, everybody should be a Christian or whatever, but I mean, to come together is one people for the good of everyone. And I would like to see more monuments to that. I think it would be cool.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. Yeah, so the only thing I would add to this conversation, thank you, Robert, would be some sort of amalgamation between, so would I rebuild it? Not as it is, obviously. I would tweak some things for clarification. But if I were to be RC Christian, I'd say probably some sort of combination of like the Ten Commandments, the greatest commandment, from Jesus, maybe the Delphic maxims, right? There's all of those at the Temple of Apollo that are good guidance, direction, virtues to follow. Maybe sprinkle in some Stoic philosophy and maybe even the non-aggression principle. So you put some sort of the best of all of those together, put that up as a waypoint for people to see instead of something that's more fluid, right? Because we have the news of the day shifts people's opinions. But if we could have something in stone, like you said, Robert, that kind of helps us just reorient ourselves, center our hearts, center our thoughts, what's wrong with that? Let's all try to do that and be kind to each other, as all the other hosts said. So with that,
wow,
I want to thank you all very much for watching and keep searching for more light. Have a good night.